Hello and welcome to the Cryptocurrency News channel. Well, I said on stream I was going to go dive into a conspiracy theory about how Bitcoin is an evil government-controlled scheme, and now I will actually take on that theory. Now, one of the many theories of how Bitcoin was created is that it was actually created by the government, the FBI, the CIA, the NRA, etc., because many of the creators, or the supposed creators of Bitcoin, actually had secret government agency connections or had worked for the government before. So what if this theory is true? Now, for starters, I don't specifically believe this theory because I think it does have a lot of holes. And I do actually think Bitcoin was actually created by Hal Finney, Nick Szabo, and maybe like Dorian Nakamoto out of the 2008-2009 mess because people basically got tired of banks controlling everything. But what if, let's just say, what if the theory that the government actually created Bitcoin to really control people is actually true? Now, Bitcoin is special among coins because it's not only the first one, the origins of Bitcoin are unknown. The origins of Ethereum, XRP, Solana, Luna, etc. are all known. We know who actually created them, we know what entities created them, and we know who controls a lot of the supply. For instance, XRP, the Ripple Foundation has the supply, plus a lot of the executives, Brad Garlinghouse, Chris Larson, and formerly Jed McCaleb, although he sold most of his XRP, actually have a lot of it as well. So the bulk of that is within them. Solana, obviously the VCs have everything. Luna, we have a distribution as well. Ethereum, they did the ICO, and they have kind of like an ongoing ICO almost. So we kind of know where those came from and who owns those coins. With Bitcoin, it's different. It's created by this guy called Satoshi Nakamoto, who we don't really know who it is. I personally think it's Hal Finney, but it could really be anyone. What if it is the NSA or whatever? Satoshi Nakamoto holds 1 million coins. It is the biggest single wallet holder out there, but those coins have not been touched for a long time, presumably because Hal Finney had the keys and he died, and no one else has the keys. Hal Finney, for those of you that don't know, has body cryogenically frozen in case we find the cure someday, so he can come back and live out his life and become this immortal god being that controls everything. But outside of that, what if it wasn't Hal Finney and it's really the NSA or the US government? Now, following that line of logic, it actually makes sense that why they don't really want El Salvador, or supposedly don't want El Salvador and other countries actually adopting Bitcoin as legal tender. Now, there's if it is the government, there's two cases for this. One is they don't really want El Salvador buying Bitcoin, and two is they say they don't, but they really do. And the IMF is in on it too. Now, the first case is they really don't, because they actually eventually want to buy all the Bitcoin back, and they don't want other countries like El Salvador buying it and getting some control of this world currency that they're actually building in the future. But number two, I think if it's the government, it might be more likely that they actually want El Salvador and these other small countries, because they can't just reveal everything at first to everyone and have this great swap. They want to have it happen slowly, where the small countries adopt Bitcoin, then the medium-sized countries adopt Bitcoin, and then it looks like the big countries like the US are adopting Bitcoin, but it was their plan all along, and they actually hold most of the Bitcoin. So the second option is they actually want these small countries to start adopting Bitcoin, but they're kind of making it look via the IMF and other entities that they don't want them adopting Bitcoin. So it seems like they're anti-Bitcoin, so people would not expect that they're the ones behind the whole thing. They created Bitcoin to actually enslave all the other small countries to actually have to depend on Bitcoin because they actually hold the most Bitcoin. And it's actually true. Most of the Bitcoin is actually held by US individuals. And the fat cats are obviously part of this plan. If you look at the big Bitcoin holders, they're basically US fat cats. Now, assuming the Satoshi Nakamoto wallet is the US government, who else do you have? You have Michael Saylor, Elon Musk, Grayscale, and a lot of other entities that are generally US-based. And all these US-based corporations are accumulating tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin. So you basically have a situation where the collection of Bitcoin is becoming more and more centralized. And who is it centralized by? Well, it's centralized by the government and the big corporate fat cats. And we know that the governments and the big corporate fat cats are generally a lot of times in league with each other. So basically you get a world of Bitcoin that's controlled by the US government and a huge bunch of fat cats. And then, like, Gary Gensler, Hester Pierce, all these guys, if this theory is true, are all just actors in this war that are like creating a drama that we're all supposed to follow. And that while in the background, they basically, the US government and these fat cats have been planning things out all along. Because remember, 1 million Bitcoin, assuming that a lot of that Bitcoin actually has been lost. By the way, if the government actually created Bitcoin, then they definitely have a way to recover the lost Bitcoin. I'm sure they have some kind of backdoor or something if the government actually created it. But let's just say that they did, and like they have control of 1 million Bitcoin. That's 5%. And these fat cats all have a large percentage of Bitcoin. And the government probably has many hidden wallets in that case because they were the first ones that probably mined in all different places because we don't really know who all the different first miners of Bitcoin actually are. So they might actually have a lot more Bitcoin than we actually have. So basically you would have the government and the fat cats controlling probably the majority of the Bitcoin. And then whatever is actually left gets parsed out to all the other countries. Probably our allies will have more, and other countries will not have as much. Now, this actually solves the China problem as well, if you actually remember, because China banned Bitcoin. Now, the thing is, like if the US created Bitcoin, they probably didn't really let China know that they created Bitcoin because the US knows the Chinese government is going to be against any kind of currency that their government can't actually control. So they could probably guess that eventually China was going to ban Bitcoin and try to start their own thing. But they also know that the Chinese CBDC can never really be the reserve currency because it's pegged the Chinese yuan, and you can't trade the Chinese yuan on the international market, which means it doesn't have much liquidity. Now, the problem with that is Bitcoin is gained by mining, right? And China actually had most of the hash rate. But since China banned all the Bitcoin miners, and basically Bitcoin moved all out of China, if in the future, Bitcoin becomes like a big part of the world economy, then China definitely loses out and they'll drop behind in power. So basically by creating Bitcoin, an economic and currency entity that's not actually controlled by China, they knew that the Chinese government would eventually ban it, especially since they're coming out with their CBDC. And because they knew the Chinese government would eventually ban it, maybe they even worked towards that direction, they know that eventually, when it's actually revealed that it's going to be like the world reserve, or not, maybe not the world reserve, but a large part of the world reserve or something, they know that China is going to seriously fall behind. So because of that, this government plot would actually get rid of their greatest competitor too. So you can see how this is all coming together. You have an entity that the government created that's supposed to be decentralized and that everyone can get by mining, but in essence, the government may all along had the biggest wallets out there. Plus, they had the U.S. fat cats basically gathering more and more of this Bitcoin. So the supply is becoming more and more centralized. And in the end, you basically get a system that is actually controlled by the U.S. government and the US fat cats. I mean, it's kind of like all coming together as a theory if you really look at it that way and if you actually believe in the theories. And remember, Bitcoin can be tracked. We know this. We've actually seen this in action. It is not anonymous like Monero. So even though it's supposed to be like your money, your wallet, and all that stuff, they can actually track your transactions much easier than they can track physical US dollars. So it actually makes sense. It may not be as good as, like, say, a CBDC for tracking, because it's not completely KYC AML'd, but the thing is, it is easier to track than physical money. So this kind of like economic system, if the US government theory holds and they actually built it, I really think it actually makes sense what they're all doing right now, that like, a lot of this SEC stuff and like Hester Pierce with the Bitcoin ETF and everything is Hester Pierce, Gary Gensler. It's all just a play. And the US government actually made Bitcoin, and now they have the biggest wallets, plus they're telling their fat cat allies to essentially gather more of the Bitcoin, and they got rid of their biggest competitor in China because they got China to ban Bitcoin, essentially. So they would actually drop out of the world economic race. Once it's revealed that Bitcoin is going to be the big reserve currency, this all comes together and actually makes sense. But that means they also probably have some kind of backdoor system, and they also have and they can also track our transactions because Bitcoin is indeed not anonymous. So it could be all part of a sinister plot to use Bitcoin to completely subvert the people and have them become all government minions in the future. So I don't really know if that theory really makes all that much sense, but a lot of people do suspect that Bitcoin is made by the government and that it was made by the NSA. Now, I personally don't really believe all parts of this theory. There's several holes in the theory, and it just doesn't really seem like it. But there is a chance that it is possible. So let me know what you think about this theory. Like and subscribe and hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.